Spanning more than 3 centuries of Britain's story, every prime minister, every obstacle, every victory that built the United Kingdom. In this presentation, we'll explore the struggles and achievements each leader encountered, from conflicts and transformations to controversies and societal evolution. Using advanced technology, we'll show how the earliest prime ministers, existing long before photography, probably appeared. As the 1700s began, Britain reached a critical juncture. Government was controlled by two competing groups, the Whigs, who supported Parliament and advancement, and the Tories, who backed the monarchy and customs. From their conflict came a fresh form of governance, the position of Prime Minister. This started in 1721 with Sir Robert Walpole, the individual who established what this role would represent for generations ahead. Robert Walpole, widely viewed as Britain's inaugural genuine prime minister. Walpole preserved calm and wealth following extended European warfare. A skilled political negotiator, he employed influence and appeal to secure parliamentary backing, though opponents claimed he was dishonest. He became the first resident of 10 Downing Street, establishing the custom for subsequent leaders. Spencer Compton, Earl of Wilmington. Wilmington's short period came after Walpole stepped down, though he served merely as a symbolic leader with minimal actual authority, as choices were made by cabinet colleagues. Weak and sick throughout most of his tenure, people joked that Britain was governed by his physicians instead of himself. Henry Pelham. Pelham delivered an interval of steadiness and transformation, lowering government debt and preventing needless conflicts. A balanced and capable manager, he collaborated smoothly with his sibling, the Duke of Newcastle. His consolidation legislation simplified criminal justice, demonstrating his focus on useful enhancements rather than dramatic gestures. Thomas Pelham Holles, Duke of Newcastle. The Duke of Newcastle proved an energetic yet nervous politician who favored operating in the background rather than center stage. His initial administration stumbled during the opening phase of the 7 Years' War, yet when he rejoined forces with William Pitt the Elder, Britain's circumstances rapidly strengthened. Famous for his vitality and anxiety equally, he could manage the nation. He simply couldn't find peace while executing it. William Cavendish, Duke of Devonshire. Devonshire functioned as an interim prime minister following the Duke of Newcastle's departure, entering to stabilize governance during a chaotic period. Admired for his integrity and balance, he took the position with hesitation and shunned publicity. His composed, reliable guidance maintained calm conditions, though he never delivered a significant policy address during his limited time leading. John Stuart, 3rd Earl of Bute. John Stuart became the initial Scottish Prime Minister after the 1707 Union and served as an intimate companion and advisor to King George III. He assisted in arranging the Treaty of Paris of 1763, which officially officiated the 7 Years' War, yet his absence of public support compelled his departure within 12 months, partially due to his Scottish heritage and partially because of his dependence on royal preference. George Grenville, a thorough and economically focused prime minister. Grenville is primarily recalled and frequently criticized for implementing the Stamp Act, which infuriated the American settlements and planted the foundations of rebellion. Recognized for his careful focus on details, he individually examined every paper, a practice that generated both praise and irritation from colleagues. Charles Watson Wentworth, Marquess of Rockingham. Rockingham, an ethical and reformist Whig, is noted for canceling the despised Stamp Act, reducing friction with America. He supported individual freedoms and resisted slavery, showing his commitment to ethical leadership. Though not a natural performer, his honesty and kindness gained him respectful acknowledgement, but he subsequently passed away in position during his second administration. William Pitt the Elder. Previously a national champion for directing Britain's military campaigns earlier in the era, Pitt assumed the role of Prime Minister in 1766 as the Earl of Chatham. His magnificent alliance offered solidarity, yet failing health quickly distanced him from administration. Nevertheless, his perception of Britain as an international force established him as among the most respected personalities of his period. Augustus Henry Fitzroy, 3rd Duke of Grafton. Grafton took office at merely 33 years of age, becoming one of Britain's youngest heads of government. His period was characterized by governmental splits and increasing disorder in the American settlements. Perceived as talented yet uncertain, he found it difficult to maintain his administration intact. Facing relentless condemnation domestically and internationally, he stepped down after fewer than 2 years in authority. Lord Frederick North. Lord North was recognized for his pleasant nature and mental capacity, yet his tenure was controlled by the American War of Independence. He attempted to harmonize strong measures with negotiation, but the settlements uprising became unmanageable. Despite surrendering America, he remained devoted to King George III and was valued for his composure during pressure. William Petty, Earl of Shelburne. Shelburne finalized the settlement with America, authorizing the Treaty of Paris that acknowledged American sovereignty. Realistic and innovative, he aimed to reconstruct Britain's commerce and power. However, governmental opponents rapidly removed him, identifying his administration as temporary yet important. William Cavendish Bentinck, Duke of Portland. Portland initially headed a brief partnership between the Whigs and Tories that disintegrated within months. Over 20 years afterward, he came back as an elderly leader during the Napoleonic conflicts. His second government was diminished by internal conflict and poor health, and he departed shortly before passing. Through both periods, Portland appeared as a reliable yet hesitant personality amid volatile governments. Henry Pitt the Younger. Assuming leadership at only 24, Pitt stands as Britain's youngest ever prime minister. Exceptional with economics and transformation, he stabilized the country and directed it through uprising and European warfare. After departing over Irish Catholic privileges, he returned to govern once more against Napoleon. His premature passing at 46 concluded one of the most extraordinary governmental journeys in British records. Henry Addington. Addington followed Pitt to provide Britain respite from conflict. He arranged the Treaty of Amiens, temporarily establishing harmony with France, and presented changes to enhance civil stability and economics. Though perceived as conservative and lacking appeal, his consistent approach assisted the nation's restoration before warfare continued and Pitt reclaimed office. William Grenville. Lord Grenville headed the Ministry of All the Talents, an uncommon alliance that brought together significant governmental personalities after extended separation. His administration accomplished the landmark abolition of the slave trade legislation in 1807, representing a principled milestone in British records. Despite that achievement, conflicts over spiritual transformation quickly dissolved his partnership. Spencer Perceval. Perceval steered Britain through wartime difficulty with control and conviction, sustaining steadiness during financial pressure and civil disorder. His period was sadly interrupted when he was murdered in the House of Commons, the sole British Prime Minister ever assassinated in position. Robert Banks Jenkinson, Earl of Liverpool. Liverpool assumed control following the surprise of Perceval's murder and directed Britain through 15 years of tremendous transformation. He managed the ultimate defeat of Napoleon and handled the challenging settlement that came after, maintaining the nation unified through disturbance and financial struggle. Though conservative by character, he established the foundation for an industrial Britain and demonstrated that composed, steady guidance could endure longer and signify more than personality alone. George Canning. Canning's leadership was temporary yet energetic. A talented speaker and advancing Tory, he aimed to update administration and broaden individual liberties while maintaining Britain away from European conflicts. His daring concepts separated his faction, but his acceptance with citizens indicated the emergence of a fresh, more progressive form of conservatism. He passed unexpectedly just 4 months after taking office. Frederick Robinson, Viscount Goderich. Robinson assumed Canning's unstable partnership and rapidly discovered it unmanageable to preserve. Gentle and sincere, yet hesitant, he battled with governmental discord and departed after merely 144 days, among Britain's briefest leaderships. Arthur Wellington, Duke of Wellington. Britain's Iron Duke, champion of Waterloo, applied a military commander's control to administration. Though originally traditional and opposed to transformation, he managed the landmark Catholic Emancipation Act of 1829, expanding governance to a wider community. His harsh approach rendered him disliked during turbulent periods, and his London residence was once struck with rocks during disturbances. Yet his honesty and dedication to obligation remained undisputed. Charles Grey, 2nd Earl Grey. Earl Grey directed among Britain's most revolutionary administrations, enacting the Great Reform Act of 1832, which broadened voting privileges and updated Parliament. He additionally managed the Slavery Abolition Act of 1833, expanding on Grenville's previous prohibition on the slave commerce to terminate slavery completely throughout the British Empire. Composed, ethical, and convincing, Grey supported advancement without disorder, though presently he's nearly as recognized for a particular beverage as for transforming the country. William Lamb, Viscount Melbourne. Melbourne proved an attractive, balanced transformer who appreciated steadiness over uprising. As Queen Victoria's initial prime minister, he turned into both her guide and intimate advisor, directing her through her beginning leadership. Though his administrations accomplished limited significant changes, his tolerance and skill assisted form the character of the fresh Victorian leadership. Robert Peel. Peel initially took office as Prime Minister in 1834, heading a brief transitional administration that started reshaping the traditional Tory faction. When he reclaimed authority in 1841, he transformed that perception into actuality, establishing the contemporary Conservative Party. His realistic transformations introduced the Mines Act and Factory Act, enhancing employment circumstances, and the cancellation of the Corn Laws, which reduced food expenses but divided his faction. Peel's departure indicated the conclusion of one period and the start of another, a transformer destroyed by his personal advancement. Lord John Russell. Russell served as the silent designer of British transformation, ethical, determined, and sometimes frustrating. He advanced Grey's democratic inheritance, broadening learning and promoting fresh transformation legislation, though numerous halted in Parliament. Twice Prime Minister, he proved more intellectual than entertainer, yet his concepts formed the direction toward contemporary liberalism. Even his opponents recognized what he missed in style, he compensated in belief. George Hamilton Gordon, 4th Earl of Aberdeen. Aberdeen headed a careful partnership administration but became overwhelmed by the Crimean War, whose inadequate handling resulted in controversy and fatalities. A considerate and reconciling leader, he appreciated negotiation over hostility, yet his peaceful nature couldn't match the disorder of conflict, and he departed under substantial condemnation. Henry John Temple, Viscount Palmerston. Palmerston represented the image of assured Victorian Britain. Commanding internationally, realistic domestically, he directed the nation through the Crimean War, advocated for enhancements to community wellness and city cleanliness, and endorsed progressive movements throughout Europe. Magnetic and confrontational, he succeeded in remaining favored during a period of doubt, receiving the title Pam, the People's Prime Minister. To certain individuals he strengthened Britain, to others he made her rash, yet nobody could disregard him. Edward Smith Stanley, Earl of Derby.
Derby governed Britain 3 occasions, each period brief, yet collectively they signified the uncomfortable shift between traditional Toryism and a more representative period. His administration enacted the Second Reform Act of 1867, broadening the ballot to numerous city working males and reshaping the governmental environment. Clever, conservative, and noble, Derby favored negotiation to confrontation, directing his faction through unstable periods.
Benjamin Disraeli, the initial and sole Jewish prime minister in British records. Disraeli proved a writer, dreamer, and language expert who transformed governance into performance. As head, he supported social transformation, reinforced the British Empire, and administered with unequaled style. His intense competition with Gladstone characterized a period. At 70, he remarked that authority arrived too late, yet he departed one of the most vibrant inheritances in British governance. William Ewart Gladstone. Gladstone functioned as prime minister for 4 distinct intervals, exceeding anyone in British records. He represented the ethical center of Victorian governance, a transformer motivated by awareness, conviction, and an unbreakable obligation. Throughout his extended profession, he broadened learning, updated the government administration, and battled for Irish home governance. Relentless and passionate, he trusted governance should enhance the spirit alongside the nation. His competition with Disraeli characterized the period. Idealism against creativity, departing Britain permanently influenced by their confrontation. Archibald Philip Primrose, 5th Earl of Rosebery. Rosebery once stated his 3 desires were to wed an heiress, possess a horse that captured the Derby, and turn into prime minister, and he accomplished them all. A scholar, noble, and hesitant politician, he assumed a separated Liberal Party following Gladstone's departure and battled to merge it. Enthusiastic about learning and the realm, he envisioned a contemporary, globally oriented Britain, yet his administration endured scarcely 12 months. Robert Gascoigne Cecil, 3rd Marquess of Salisbury. Salisbury became the final prime minister to administer from the House of Lords, a withdrawn noble who favored silent planning to community recognition. Across 3 periods, he steered Britain through the peak of its realm, harmonizing authority governance in Europe with growth internationally. He trusted in carefulness, not campaigns, and his negotiation preserved harmony where others could have endangered conflict. The concluding magnificent personality of the Victorian period. Arthur James Balfour. Balfour proved a composed, intellectual head, more thinker than politician. As Salisbury's relative and follower, he encountered disorder domestically and ambiguity internationally, enacting the Education Act of 1902, yet battling to motivate solidarity. His leadership was temporary, but his identity continues through the Balfour Declaration of 1917, which endorsed a Jewish territory in Palestine. Henry Campbell Bannerman. Friendly, clever, and silently progressive, Campbell Bannerman directed Britain into the fresh era with a tender approach and a transformer's spirit. He supported harmony internationally and advancement domestically, presenting the Probation Act of 1907, which substituted imprisonment with recovery from minor violators, a milestone in compassionate fairness. Though his period was limited, his consideration and belief departed a permanent influence on contemporary liberalism. Herbert Henry Asquith. Asquith represented the reliable guidance of early 20th century liberalism. Reflective, expressive, and composed, his administration presented milestone transformations like elderly pensions and state coverage, establishing the basis for the contemporary assistance nation. Yet his peaceful guidance was challenged by the First World War, where tolerance transformed to immobility. Compelled away in 1916, Asquith departed behind both advancement and sorrow, a transformer surpassed by events. David Lloyd George, the initial Welshman to assume prime minister.
David Lloyd George proved the passionate transformer who directed Britain to triumph in the First World War and through the uncomfortable settlement that came after. The offspring of a shoemaker, he climbed from modest origins to revolutionize British governance, supporting social transformation, women's voting privileges, and residences for returning warriors. Exceptional, daring, and controversial, he governed with enthusiasm and strategy. To certain individuals, he represented the individual who succeeded the conflict. To others, the individual who surrendered the settlement. Andrew Bonar Law. Bonar Law proved a hesitant prime minister, a silent personality who entered authority when limited others desired it. Originated in Canada and developed in Scotland, he directed Britain for scarcely 12 months before sickness compelled his departure. With no significant transformations or triumphs to his identity, his period rapidly disappeared from community recollection. He remained reliable, earnest, and temporary, the individual who maintained the position between giants. Stanley Baldwin. Baldwin represented the silent, reliable guidance of interwar Britain, functioning under three rulers, George V, Edward VIII, and George VI. 3 occasions prime minister, he trusted peaceful guidance represented power, not vulnerability, steering the country through commercial disorder, financial transformation, and the emergence of widespread representation. He addressed immediately to citizens through the fresh platform of broadcasting, his friendliness and tolerance gaining uncommon community confidence. And when the abdication emergency arrived, Baldwin confronted it with silent respect, demonstrating that control can represent the most genuine expression of power. Ramsay MacDonald. Ramsay MacDonald became Britain's initial Labour Prime Minister, a self-taught Scotsman who climbed from humble origins to authority. His initial administration proved temporary, yet his second encountered the complete burden of the Great Depression. Attempting to rescue the finances, he established a nationwide administration with his conservative opponents, a decision his personal faction perceived as disloyalty. Previously the representation of working-class aspiration, MacDonald concluded as a solitary personality, valued by certain individuals, mistrusted by numerous, the idealist destroyed by negotiation. Neville Chamberlain. Chamberlain arrived to authority resolved to maintain harmony in a society moving toward conflict. Composed, accurate, and profoundly ethical, he is recalled primarily for the Munich Agreements of 1938, when he came back from Germany announcing peace for our time. Domestically, he enhanced accommodation and assistance, yet his confidence in negotiation couldn't prevent the unavoidable. When conflict ultimately arrived, his silent assurance transformed to uncertainty. An individual characterized not by disappointment, yet by the aspiration that events would demonstrate him incorrect. Winston Churchill. Churchill assumed prime minister as Britain confronted Nazi Germany alone, a determined spirit in human shape. His addresses, "We shall battle on the shores" and "Their finest moment," transformed language into a tool of conflict, motivating a country through its bleakest days. But his narrative remained never straightforward. Loss came after triumph, and certain of his choices, from Gallipoli to Realm, departed harsh discussion behind. Reclaiming position in the 1950s, more experienced yet unbending, he stayed exceptional, determined, and completely motivated, the individual who provided Britain both its expression and its uncertainties. Clement Attlee. Attlee represented the silent revolutionary who reconstructed Britain following the conflict. Withdrawn and humble, he directed among the most progressive administrations in records, establishing the National Health Service, broadening assistance, and nationalizing essential sectors. An individual of limited expressions yet profound belief, Attlee transformed wartime solidarity into permanent transformation. Churchill succeeded the addresses. Attlee transformed the nation. Anthony Eden. Eden had anticipated half a lifetime to follow Churchill, a refined diplomat prepared to direct a contemporary Britain. Yet his leadership was destroyed by the Suez Emergency of 1956, when a secret attack of Egypt transformed victory into disgrace. Previously perceived as the logical successor to Churchill's magnificence, Eden's wellness and reputation never restored.
Sophisticated and sad, his narrative identifies the instant Britain's authority internationally started to diminish and its misconceptions with it. Harold Macmillan. Macmillan arrived to authority offering calm following the disorder of Suez, sophisticated, clever, and comforting. He informed a prospering country, "You've never experienced it so favorable." Under his guidance, living criteria climbed, fresh residences were constructed, and Britain experienced wealthy again. Yet, underneath the appearance, the realm was contracting, and the Profumo controversy revealed fractures in the foundation. Macmillan's appeals steadied Britain during transforming periods, a refined leader for a period preparing to surrender its purity. Alec Douglas Home. Douglas Home represented the final of Britain's noble prime ministers, polite, humble, and silently traditional. Selected to steady the vessel following Macmillan's departure, he notably surrendered his designation to function in the Commons, connecting nobility and representation. Yet his peaceful approach couldn't rival Harold Wilson's contemporary media expertise in Labour Party, and he surrendered the vote just 12 months afterward. Harold Wilson. Wilson represented the image of a fresh contemporary Britain, intelligent, assured, and perpetually calculated. His administrations broadened possibility through comprehensive social transformations in learning, accommodation, wellness, retirement, gender fairness, and assistance for the impaired and child hardship. A skilled communicator, he harmonized idealism with realism, directing Britain through swift transformation with his characteristic pipe and dry Yorkshire cleverness. Not even being struck in the vision by a schoolboy's stink explosive could disturb his calmness. Evidence that for Wilson, governance was perpetually best handled coolly and intelligently. Edward Heath. Heath proved the realistic modernizer who brought Britain into Europe. A traditionally educated musician turned politician, he trusted in productivity, structure, and the commitment of advancement. His administration accomplished among Britain's significant diplomatic transformations, entering the European Economic Association. Yet, domestically, price increases, labor disputes, and power failures diminished his achievement. Lacking appeal, yet determined, Heath administered with the control of a director and the isolation of an individual somewhat disconnected with his period. James Callaghan. Callaghan directed Britain through a tempest of financial emergency and commercial disorder. The sole individual to function as finance minister, diplomatic leader, interior leader, and prime minister, he applied expertise and peaceful power to the position. Yet, increasing price increases and the winter of dissatisfaction departed his administration immobilized. Nevertheless, Son Jim, as he was recognized, confronted chaos with tolerance and straightforward sincerity. Margaret Thatcher. Thatcher arrived to authority offering power and restoration, and she provided both at an expense. Britain's initial female prime minister and the longest functioning of the 20th era, she destroyed the authority of labor organizations, transferred government sectors, and supported unrestricted markets with steadfast conviction. Her determination during the Falklands conflict and the Cold War gained her the designation the Iron Lady. But her severe measures separated the nation, departing complete societies revolutionized and others abandoned. Admired or despised, she transformed Britain more significantly than any head of her period. John Major. Major came after the Iron Lady with a gentler approach, courteous, reliable, and resolved to repair a separated country. He directed Britain through economic downturn, authorized the Maastricht Treaty that connected the UK nearer to Europe, and assisted establish the basis for settlement in Northern Ireland. Yet controversies and inter-faction conflicts frequently dominated his accomplishments. Tony Blair. Blair arrived to authority on an energy of hopefulness, offering a fresh form of governance for a fresh era. Magnetic and media skilled, he redesigned labor as new labor, mixing social fairness with financial realism. His administration produced settlement in Northern Ireland, funding in education and medical facilities, and an assured contemporary Britain. Yet his choice to participate in the Iraq conflict would characterize him, separating the community. Blair's period in authority represented one of aspiration, transformation, and debate. Gordon Brown. Brown arrived to authority as a dedicated, ethical head. He directed Britain through the international economic emergency, saving the financial institutions and preventing disaster. His administration managed devolution in Northern Ireland, the removal of forces from Iraq, and enacted the planet's initial climate transformation legislation. Yet his leadership was pursued by financial struggle, governmental controversies, and a community exhausted following extended labor governance. A head valued for his intellect, yet infrequently appreciated for his approach. David Cameron. Cameron assumed Downing Street as the youthful image of a fresh conservatism, contemporary, balanced, and media-skilled. He directed Britain through restraint and partnership, authorized same-gender union, and supported a perception of social solidarity under the phrase big society. Yet his choice to summon the EU vote would characterize him. When Britain selected to depart, he departed the following day, a peaceful transformer destroyed by the tempest he initiated. Mayor May. May turned into Britain's second female prime minister, assuming a country separated by Brexit. Conservative, thorough, and profoundly reserved, she offered to establish the nation function for all and to provide the community's desire with silent resolve. Yet Brexit demonstrated relentless, agreement after agreement dismissed, her power diminishing with every loss. Valued for her determination, yet separated ultimately, May's leadership was characterized by obligation and stalemate, a head captured by the tempest she never established. Boris Johnson. Johnson entered Downing Street with a commitment to finalize Brexit and a style for performance limited could equal. His confidence and hopefulness secured an overwhelming triumph, and he directed Britain through both Brexit's finish and the disorder of the COVID outbreak. Yet controversy and debate quickly pursued him. Lockdown gatherings, departures, and uprising diminishing his power. Exceptional, yet destroyed by his personal surplus, Johnson's leadership represented a storm of victory and chaos, as uncertain as the individual himself. Liz Truss. Truss offered to reduce taxation, stimulate expansion, and challenge the established order. Yet her strategies disturbed the financial systems and separated her personal faction, causing financial disorder and governmental failure within weeks. Following merely 49 days in position, she departed, the briefest functioning prime minister in British records. Rishi Sunak. Sunak assumed Downing Street, offering steadiness following among the most unstable years in British governance. The initial British Asian Prime Minister, he applied calm and capability following disorder, directing Britain through price increases, labor disputes, and international ambiguity. Yet his careful approach and conservative transformations couldn't revive community excitement. Following the Conservatives' 2024 vote loss, he departing behind an inheritance of structure without restoration. Keir Starmer. Starmer turned into Prime Minister following Labour's overwhelming triumph in 2024, offering steadiness and nationwide restoration. A previous legal official transformed politician, he constructed his standing on control and silent capability instead of appeal. His administration has concentrated on restoring community assistance, reinforcing the finances, and fixing Britain's international position. But despite these attempts, he remains formally the most disliked prime minister in contemporary records, based on surveys, battling to motivate. From Walpole to Starmer, 3 eras of guidance, victories, challenges, and critical moments that formed Britain. If you appreciated this exploration through records, give the presentation approval, subscribe if you're fresh, and distribute it with a companion politics lover who'd appreciate a journey through history.